It's very nice to meet you, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
My name is 이사장 of Korean Broadcasting System. Yeah. 네. 한국에 오신 게 9년 만입니다. 좀 뭐 습하고 더운 날씨 또 폭우도 있는데 좀 불편하진 않으셨는지요?
Yeah, it's great to be back. You know, South Korea's advanced a lot, so it's always impressive to see the new things, to see partners here, and talk to the government about things we can do together.
어제 국회에서나 뭐 대통령 만남 같은 건 만족스럽게 끝나셨는지도 궁금합니다. 그냥 이거는 네, 인사 차원에서 네.
Well, it's a great honor for me to spend time with the president and to have that chance to talk to the National Assembly. You know, the work of the Gates Foundation is to help with health, and so there's an opportunity to take resources and expertise here in South Korea. So I got a chance to share thoughts about how we can work together.
먼저 한국 정부와 이제 보건의료 양해각서를 체결하러 오셨습니다. 그런데 이제 많은 저희 한국 시청자들께서는 빌 게이츠와 백신, 빌 게이츠와 팬데믹 이게 무슨 얘기지 궁금하신 분들도 많을 것 같아요. 간단하게 먼저 설명을 좀 해주실까요?
Well, since I retired from Microsoft, my focus has been to help with global health. That's a big priority, and then also climate change. So, you know, I'm giving away my fortune to help with innovations. You know, I think these are important areas, and you know, the government of South Korea is also, you know, believes in stopping the next pandemic before it gets started, and helping save lives, particularly of children around the world. So, you know, whatever resources or expertise I have are now devoted to these causes. And the progress of the last 20 years has been quite amazing. You know, we've been able to cut the number of children who die in half, and we're hoping to cut it in half again.
2015년에 그 강연을 하신 게 코로나 이후에 계속 화제가 됐습니다. 그때 뭐라고 하셨냐면 100년 전 스페인 독감처럼 앞으로 무언가가 1000만 명을 넘게 죽인다면 그건 전쟁이 아니라 바이러스일 것이다 라고 얘기를 하셨어요. 근데 지금 상황을 예측한 것 같은 대목 때문에 사람들이 많이 놀랐습니다. 혹시 본인도 코로나 사태 이후에 좀 놀라셨는지?
Well, it's a little bit sad that the steps to prevent the pandemic were not taken. Very little was done in terms of staffing up the surveillance or the innovation. And of course, this pandemic was a great tragedy. Not only the deaths, the economic impact, and a lot of suffering. So now's the chance to really take the right steps and invest and make sure it doesn't happen again.
미래 감염병에 대응하고 이 저소득 국가의 감염병 퇴치를 위해서 한국 정부의 역할이 중요하다 이제 강조를 하셨는데 왜 한국인지가 궁금합니다. 예전에 스스로를 성질 급한 낙관주의자라고 하신 적이 있어요. 근데 빨리빨리 이런 한국 문화가 적합하다고 생각을 하신 건지 혹시?
Well, Korea has a lot of great capabilities. The advances in the biological sciences by many of the companies here has been very impressive. Of course, we need the whole world to work together. You know, each country can contribute resources, and we have to cooperate, you know, to find the outbreak very early. Korea has shown that in vaccine design and manufacturing, it's got great capabilities. It won't be the only country, but it'll be one that will help a lot.
한국의 역할이 중요하다고 얘기를 하셨을 때 혹시 윤 대통령은 어떻게 반응을 했는지 궁금하거든요. 뭐라고 얘기하던가요?
Well, certainly no one wants to see another pandemic. And the advances in vaccines have saved millions of lives, you know, to make the world a far better place. And so I think it's gratifying that, you know, with some aid generosity and some priority by the strong companies here, a lot of innovation can help us reduce deaths every year and catch the next outbreak and stop it before we have a repeat of this pandemic.
SK 최태원 회장과는 백신과 관련해서 뭐 여러 해 동안 얘기를 나누신 걸로 알고 있는데 이번에는 혹시 뭘 구체적으로 논의하셨는지 얘기해 주실 수 있을까요?
Well, we have research programs with many companies here in Korea. SK recently came out with a COVID vaccine, which has some very good characteristics. Our foundation has spent over $300 million backing the research of a variety of companies. And we even have a cooperative effort with the government and research, which is called the Right Fund, that's working on over 15 different products to help with global health. Well, there's an institute here called IVI that's done great research on a lot of diseases, including diarrheal diseases that kill millions of children over the last decade. And so in many cases, they'll be taking that basic research and they have the ability to turn it into products, to do the trials, to do the factories and make it very, very inexpensive. So, across all these infectious diseases, we should be able to make it so a child born anywhere in the world is as likely to live as a child born in the United States or South Korea.
그럼 이제 한국 방역 얘기를 좀 해보겠습니다. 이번에 내신 책 그 넥스트 팬데믹을 대비하는 법을 봐도 한국이 자주 등장하거든요. 한국 정부의 대응에 후한 평가를 하셨던데 이유가 뭘까요?
Well, we can look across the various countries and see what the level of death has been per the population. And sadly, the United States and many other rich countries have a death rate far, far higher than South Korea or Japan or Australia. So it's interesting to look at, okay, what was different? For example, in Japan and South Korea, the compliance for mask wearing is much higher than in the United States. So that's a reason why the death rate has been much lower. Now, of course, the pandemic's been terrible in every country, and we were learning as we were going, so no country did a perfect job.
물론 변이 바이러스가 유행하는 이유가 크긴 하지만 한국에서는 거리두기 수칙이 좀 누그러진 뒤에 코로나가 다시 좀 확산하는 경향이 있습니다. 지금 한국 정부의 대응에 대해서도 똑같이 평가를 하시는지. 네.
Yes, there's no chance that the Korean death rate will get to the U.S. level. It's way, way below. And yes, you always have some rebound as you start to open up. But, the key thing now is to focus on ending this pandemic and then taking the lessons, including investing in even better vaccines and other tools so that it just doesn't happen again.
아까 이제 마스크에 관해서는 잠깐 언급을 해주셨는데 한국의 대응에서 특히 좀 인상적이었던 게 어떤 것들이 있을까요? 마스크 외에도. 네.
Well, I mentioned in my book that some of the contact tracing, the ability to find the cases and stop those chains of infection, there was fairly quick action in doing that.
그리고 책에 보면 이제 과잉 대응을 하고 있으면 잘하는 것이다 이런 얘기도 하셨습니다. 그런데 이제 한국에서는 거리두기, 영업 제한 조치를 오래 하면서 소상공인들이나 자영업자들 피해도 좀 컸거든요. 어려운 질문입니다만 이럴 경우에 정부는 어디까지 피해를 보전해줘야 된다 이런 생각이 있으신지요?
Well, there are very tough trade-offs involved when you have disease, spreading. What about school? When is it good to have it, not have it? And, each country has to study its own circumstances at various times. So there are very difficult trade-offs to be made. We have to catch up on education. If we look at vaccination around the world, it fell by about 20% even in the poor countries. And so we have to be generous now and help those countries catch up for all the things that didn't get done during the pandemic.
이사장님을 포함한 이런 뭐 슈퍼리치라고들 하죠. 자산이 늘기도 했습니다. 네, 최근 빌 앤 멀린다 게이츠 재단에 이제 200억 달러, 우리 돈으로 26조 원이 넘는데 추가로 기부를 하셨습니다. 이런 세계적인 재난 상황에서 기업가들의 사회적인 책임 어디까지라고 보시는 건가요?
Well, in my case, my money is going to the Gates Foundation, and we dedicate that to saving lives, to eradicating polio, eradicating malaria, helping with new tools, for example, to stop HIV. And so, it's a voluntary thing, but I feel a great responsibility to make sure that money is spent well. Also a good friend of mine, Warren Buffett, has given tens of billions to the foundation, and so I feel a huge responsibility to him to make sure the money's spent very, very well.
그럼 한국 대기업들도 뭐 SK가 됐던 삼성이 됐던 이런 백신을 개발한다거나 뭐 R&D에 투자를 하는 것 외에도 사회적으로 이렇게 뭐 재단을 만든다든지 이런 역할을 해야 된다고 보십니까?
Well, sometimes you have foundation work at the corporate level, but more often, foundation work is done at the individual level. And so each person can say, in addition to their work, how much do they choose to give? The tradition of philanthropy is a global phenomena, but it's particularly strong in the United States, the idea of giving back and having very large foundations. I'm hoping it'll spread because I think it's a very positive force in society, even though compared to, say, the government or the private sector, it's very small. But there are a few things like funding work on malaria that foundations can probably do the best in some of those missing areas.
이제 기부라는 방식도 있지만 이사장님이 하시는 것처럼 미국에서 논쟁이 한창인 부유세도 있고요. 한국에서는 최근에 이제 횡재세라는 게 이제 논란이 불거졌습니다. 뭐 예기치 못한 일로 뭐 큰 이익을 기업이 얻을 경우에 일부를 이제 사회에 내놓자 이런 얘기인데 이런 것도 대안이 될 수 있다고 보시는지요? 네.
Well, first you pay your taxes, and then philanthropy comes, if you have anything left over, philanthropy comes for that piece. So they're really two separate issues. What do the voters want the taxes to be? How progressive should they be? Which that's very different in different countries, but subject to debate. For the U.S., we could be more progressive in our taxation, but still, even once you pay those taxes, I think philanthropy for the remainder can have a very beneficial effect.
이제 한 나라 안에서의 격차도 문제지만 팬데믹 이후에 가난한 나라와 이제 부유한 나라의 격차도 굉장히 심각합니다. 뭐 나이지리아에서 백신을 이제 폐기하는 사진 이런 것들이 한동안 되게 화제가 됐는데 선진국들이 유통기한이 임박한 백신을 지원한 탓에 이걸 사용 못하고 이제 버린 일도 있었거든요. 이런 이기주의, 백신 이기주의는 다급한 상황이 또 닥치면 얼마든지 일어날 수 있는 일 아닐까요? 어떻게 보십니까?
Yeah, I wish everyone had a chance to go visit Africa and see the challenges there. I think we'd all be more generous with our government aid budgets or philanthropy if we could see, there's still hundreds of thousands of kids dying of malaria. And so helping those countries, lifting them up, I think that's very important. And most of our foundation resources go to help those poor countries.
또 나오는 얘기가 이런 격차를 줄이기 위해서 지적재산권 포기 같은 뭐 이런 사회적 합의가 필요하다는 지적도 있습니다. 뭐 저렴한 복제 백신을 만들기 쉽게 하자는 건데요. 여기에 좀 회의적이신 걸로 알고 있습니다. 이유를 좀 설명해 주실 수 있을까요?
Well, when we provide medicines to the poor countries, we don't have any intellectual property. It's all done at the cost of manufacture, the very cheapest it can be. And the foundation has caused the price of vaccines to go down very, very dramatically because we find the lowest cost producer. So for example, the measles vaccine, costs 1/5 of what it cost before we got involved. And it's kind of amazing that if you find somebody who can make things cheap and guarantee that volume to them, you can get those vaccines to be often even less than $1.
그 아예 부유한 국가가 국내 총생산 기준으로 뭐 일정 부분 예를 들어 0.7% 이상 뭐 이렇게 지원금으로 내놓자는 주장도 계속 나오는데 한국도 이런 데 동참을 해야 된다고 생각하십니까?
Well, certainly, 0.7% is not overly burdensome. Very few countries give at that level. Norway and Sweden give above that level. Germany gives at that level. Europe gives at about 0.5%. Here in South Korea, there's an intention to go from 0.16 up to 0.3%, which would be fantastic and save millions of lives. And it would make South Korea, which is the 10th largest economy, it would match its generosity and make it the 10th largest donor. So I'm hoping that the voters and the politicians see that, looking at the history of South Korea, which has been so successful, that giving back, 0.3% is a doable thing and can have a huge impact.
이런 얘기를 윤석열 대통령과도 혹시 나누셨는지, 뭐 기금 조성이나 투자 같은 부문에서요. 네.
No, absolutely. There's some very successful organizations, one called Global Fund, another called CEPI, that are there to both stop pandemics and to save lives. And our foundation is giving billions to these organizations that pool the money and the expertise and have a great impact in return for that generosity.
그리고 이제 한국에 오셨으니까 한국은 이제 빼놓을 수 없는 또 다른 문제가 있습니다. 휴전선 너머에 북한이 있는데 북한은 최근에 이제 코로나에서 벗어났다 이렇게 종식을 선언하긴 했지만 의료 인프라가 취약하고 폐쇄적입니다. 혹시 북한의 코로나 정보를 접하신 게 있을까요?
That's of course, many people are offering vaccines to all the countries, including North Korea. The complexity of why it's not being accepted, obviously the people in this country know a lot more about that than I do.
뭐 이런 자선 단체나 이런 활동을 하시는 분들을 통해서 정보를 접하신 건 없다는 걸로 제가 이해를 해야 할까요? 그러면?
No, I don't have any special knowledge. I read about the whole world, but there's very little data in that case.
그러면 이제 북한이 팬데믹으로 위급한 상황에 처한다면 한국 정부나 뭐 국제사회가 나서서 백신이나 의료 장비를 지원해야 한다고 보시는지. 네.
I believe in generosity. I believe in, medicines for all children. I believe all children should live a healthy life. The world is very rich. The world is very innovative. And we should always think about those who have less. I travel around Africa, and so those are the countries I know very well. I've seen the malaria, I've seen the HIV, and that really moves me to devote my resources and my time to those causes.
그럼 이제 팬데믹의 미래를 어떻게 생각하시는지 좀 듣고 싶습니다. 뭐 진단부터 백신이나 치료제 앞으로 어떤 방향으로 발전할 거라고 내다보십니까? 뭐 예를 들어서 코에 뿌리는 백신 이런 것도 언급을 하셨던데요.
Yeah, there's many technologies, and that's why I wrote the book, to get people excited about using innovation to be ready. Early on in a pandemic, you won't have a vaccine, and so you want to have something that can stop the spread. And so that's one of the projects being worked on here in Korea, but that's for the next pandemic, not It's too late, sadly, to stop the global spread.
또 하나 팬데믹 이후에 아주 큰 변화가 생겼습니다. 뭐 이전에는 상상도 못했지만 동영상을 통해서 실시간으로 수업을 하고요. 학교에 안 가고도 학생들이 또 재택근무를 하면서 컴퓨터로 회의를 하고 이런 것들이 일상이 됐습니다만 이제 뭐 도구나 접근성에서 격차가 생기고요. 학생들의 경우에는 이제 학업 성취도가 더 벌어지기도 했습니다. 이런 디지털 빈부 격차는 어떻게 좁힐 수 있다 아이디어가 있으실까요?
Well, every country should look at both their internet connections. Are they getting out to the rural areas, and are there special pricing so that students can have that access? I do think a lot of online interactive learning can be beneficial, and so we learned during the pandemic how to design those courses. In the poor countries, that's not achievable, but in the rich countries, every student should have the internet and be able to take advantage of it.
어제 빌 게이츠는 디지털에 또 오늘의 빌 게이츠는 이제 기후 변화와 팬데믹에 집중하고 있는 것 같습니다. 그러면 빌 게이츠의 다음 관심사 어디로 향해 있는지 어디로 옮겨갈지 궁금합니다.
Well, I'm sure that the foundation will be my full-time focus the rest of my life. We have very ambitious goals around disease eradication, making sure there's not another pandemic, HIV for a long time, and we don't have a vaccine, so we need to solve that. Tuberculosis is particularly bad in Africa, but even rich countries still have some, so we need better drugs, we need a vaccine. So, I'm enjoying this work. I enjoy the partnerships that I get to have, and so this is what I'll do the rest of my life.
네, 인터뷰 감사합니다. 그러니까 다음 팬데믹에 대비를 해야 한다고 줄곧 강조를 하고 있는데 솔직히 다음 팬데믹은 없었으면 하는 바람입니다. 동의하시죠?
Well, there'll certainly be outbreaks, and whether or not we're able to stop them early before they spread, that's up to us and the investments we make. It's just like, fires. There we do invest very heavily, and here we didn't, but now we know that we need to.
네, 소중한 시간 감사합니다. 한국에서 또 뵙기를 기대하겠습니다.
Thank you.
Thank you
That's
very
great.
much. Thank you so much.
Great.